Fuck you.
Oh, what are you doing there, Matt?
Well, all right. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do this just for comedic effect. Hold on. Let me see if I can get this to do it. No, I won't even stay. All right. I'm just going to have to like sit on a phone book or something. It's terrible. Anyway. All right. What do you want to do
Look
first?
at you. Why are you so short? What's going on over there?
This sucks. So if I'm worried about all this, what you're saying is I should invest in like clowns and loud circus music and I don't know, like craziest things imaginable. That's what you're telling me.
Oh, I think you should
Crazy.
invest in crazy. I think you should invest in things that make you happy because today's topic might be anxiety producing for some folks.
Hey, you know what's going to make me happy? If we get into this show, I'm Matt Robison with Mike Morton. It's Financial Life Planning. And, I always have a delightful time doing these. And I love our little cold opens where even I'm confused about where we're going with this. Where you want to go with this is to a fascinating thing. I've always wanted to know the answer to this. I really have. Because this is like a really common myth, and it kind of crosses the streams, Ghostbuster style, between your expertise and my expertise. You on the financial planning side, me on the politics side. You want to talk about what's the effect of what happens in the election on our investment decisions, and does it really matter? Can you sort of time it? Can you make predictions about, well, I think it's going to go this way, therefore I should invest in that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we're at the, obviously big election cycle, this fall. And so people get nervous for all kinds of reasons. Okay. And then a follow on might be, geez, this might have a real effect on the US, the economy, the world. And now I'm thinking about my personal retirement and my investments. And geez, I'm kind of worried about all of the unknowns ahead of me. And is there something I can do? Right, tying into our last episode. Oh, what can I do? I got to do something, to take advantage of this, volatility or what might happen, or how should I adjust my investments so that I will be okay.
And let me just put a programming note into this that you'll want to hold on for our one thing segment at the end, where we just serendipitously, literally on the spot as we were starting to record this, came up with the perfect tie-in, our one little life lesson of the day. That it's a great connection point, but. Let's get to the main course before we get to the after dinner dessert. As long as I've obviously known more about politics, working in Congress, all that. I've always thought, I not only have insight into what's going to happen in the election, which is not always true, sometimes true. I also think, and then I know what the consequence is going to be of whichever way it shakes out in the markets. Get us into this. I mean. Yeah. How do most people experience that question? Is this a common misperception?
No, that's exactly what you just said is what most people do. It's like, I've got, an inkling like which way this is going to go. I've been, really diving into this, reading the news, keeping track, right? And then now that I know or think I know that, how does the follow on? Oh, yeah, it's going to be, good for the economy, bad for the economy. Therefore, I need to change my investment. So it's very common that not only do you think you can predict the outcome of an election, but also that you can then follow on the prediction to how the stock market will return investment returns based on that.
I remember that this was fairly common in 2016 because Donald Trump was such a black box. There was a lot of polling going into it showing that voters were super confused about what he was all about. There was actually a plurality of voters thought that he was very moderate. And there was also all this discussion about, he sounds kind of nutty. I'm trying to be nice here because, we may have some Trump fans. I'm not one, but listen, I've got Trump fans in my life. So I'm not making judgments here. I mean, I'll make some judgments.
Well, yes, you are. But anyway, we're gonna move on though.
Yeah. But so there was this real question of is he going to govern as a conventional president? And so the perception was if Trump somehow wins, which people were truly not expecting, correct. If Trump wins, it's going to be really weird for the markets and the markets are going to freak out. So yeah. Did any of that bear out?
Yeah, that's what I really wanted to focus in on, two examples. And this one being, a really important one from the 2016 election, because I remember that clearly too, the way that you're describing it. And many predicted that, the Trump victory, although it seemed unlikely, heading into the final election, would be bad for the markets. Like that was definitely all the news was like, man, if he does get elected, this is going to be bad for the stock market. And what actually happened when you look back at the graphs, we all might know it now, it's called the Trump rally. After the election, the stock market went up and up and up. And, it kept going for years as well. But even the following 4 months, it just went up. So what happened the night of the election when he won, it actually did drop overnight significantly. All the unknowns, the volatility, like, geez, we don't know what's going to happen next. But then the next day, it was even up 1% and just kept going from there. And so if you can think back, that's exactly right. Everybody was wrong. I mean, that was the overwhelming media was saying, oh, this is going to be bad for the stock market, investments. We don't know what he's going to be doing. It's unknown. And it turned out to just be, hey, stay invested, and you won out by just staying invested in the stock market.
I think it's a great example because this is a perfect intersection of rational expectations. I mean, one thing we know is that we're all taught, if you have a background in economics, we were all taught based on rational expectations, the idea that markets are rational. What have we learned in the last 30 or 40 years? What did Daniel Kahneman win a Nobel Prize for? People aren't rational. And when you crowd a lot of people together, forget the wisdom of crowds. People aren't rational. Markets aren't always rational. And so, I could give you economic data. There's actually phenomenal economic data over the last 50 or 60 years that when you have a Democrat in the presidency, the economy tends to do better. And you would think, well, if the economy is doing better, then businesses will be doing better. Therefore, Democratic president equals good for business equals better stock market returns. Overall, that pattern does kind of hold, but that's not the way the market sees it. And the market perception is much more like, hey, Republican in office, reduced regulations, businesses like that. And so the point is, you don't know, even if it's rational, even if you don't think it's rational, you don't know how the market's going to react.
Yeah. And remember that the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Oh, that's such a great point. Hold on. I'm going to take a sip of coffee here. I really am.
Look, I can come out with quotes too, man.
The market can stay irrational. I got to read this back. The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Yeah.
It's like when your kid says, I'm going to hold my breath until I get what I want. And it's
That's right.
Actually, they might be able to outlast me.
That's right. That one might work.
Oh my gosh.
So two things, it reminded me two things. There's kind of 4 bullet points that these examples teach us, and you hit on 2 of them. All right. The one is that initial reactions can be really misleading, right? So that's the irrational part of markets. Like, oh my gosh, this thing's going to be terrible, and the market crashes, or this is going to be great, and it goes way up. And then it might settle down after that. So we definitely saw that with the Trump election in 2016. It immediately went down. The market immediately went down, but then bounced back. So just be very careful of initial reactions or making strong conclusions. And especially, I do not recommend really changing your investments significantly, based on those initial reactions. And the other thing you mentioned is, well, you would think, the Democrats and Republicans and the policy and which is better for the markets. The macroeconomic and world environment matters a lot more than who's sitting in the office. All right. So you've got all these world, companies are now global, right? So it's really big picture can outweigh, who's sitting, in the Oval Office.
You're teeing up, especially that world events matter more than who the president happens to be. I think that part of the origin story of the misconception, at least for people of our vintage, because I think there's a foundational story that I'd like to introduce, but let's not go. Let's just put that in the parking lot for just a minute, because I think it's a fascinating case study to walk through. I want to get to your other example. You wanted to hit on not just the Trump election, but rewind 8 years before that to the Obama election. What's sort of the lesson learned out of that one?
Yeah, so the Obama election, thought it would be a lot of market volatility, due to reforms and other, platform, what he was talking about at the time. So the expectation going in was a lot of volatility due to changes in the corporate structures and other things. Okay. And in contrast, McCain was seen as really continuation of conservative, pro-market policies, et cetera. So that was kind of the going in predictions, like, oh, if Obama wins, it's going to be, trouble ahead. And now you see a common theme that I would say in is all elections. Like no matter what, because the elections are anxiety producing, we don't know the outcome and we hate sort of the unknowns. You tend to extend that to everything in your life, especially the markets. Like, oh, the election's kind of unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't really know the policies. Therefore, the market's unknown. We don't know which way it's going to go, which leads to volatility. We can talk more about that. You're seeing that already here in September. The markets are going up and down more. This happens at every election. The markets hate unknowns. All right. Stock markets hate unknowns. So when you reach these points like elections, you're going to have more volatility. So that's what, going into that election. But then what happened was Obama won and the markets did go down. But the reason was we're in a global financial crisis. Okay. That's sort of a totally outweighed what he was able to accomplish, right? It gets back to that macroeconomics. But then obviously things, settled down and started to come back and had very, very positive years for positive returns for years and years and years.
I think what that points out is that you could have maybe seen the seeds of how it would go in retrospect based on how Obama and McCain were reacting to the financial crisis in the moment, right? Obama was the one who was bending over backwards to try to create some kind of, I'm not dissing McCain here. McCain had a lot of great qualities. Okay. But Obama was the one who was really engaged in, hey, we've got to support the TARP, which was the big financial rescue. The whole point of that, Hank Paulson was the Secretary of the Treasury at the time. He invented this idea of, for those who don't remember the 2008 financial crisis, he said, you know what? He came to Congress. He said, listen, we've got to pass a huge financial rescue bill. And he just came up with a number out of thin air and he admitted it. And his whole point was, it's just got to be a big number to try to calm people down, to make it feel like, wow, we're really bringing in the big guns here. Obama was all about it. McCain was much more, well, let's think out of the box. I don't really have an idea. I don't know what I'm going to do. Markets hate uncertainty. You could have kind of seen that an Obama administration would bend over backwards to calm the market, settle the situation. But of course, that's the kind of story we're really good at telling ourselves later. A few years have gone by and we're kind of looking in the rear view.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was thinking as you were talking about that. Like, we always craft the stories after the fact. I mean, it cracks me up. I read the headlines every day and I love that the headline will read, stock market goes down because ... And they'll just like come up with something, stock market goes up because ... So they just, whether it went up or down, they just say that and then come up with a reason.
Right. We're storytelling machines. Our brains are storytelling machines. So we have to fit a story. This is what happened. It's like, did it though? Is that really actually what happened? I mean, even when it seems crystal clear later, it's like, is that actually what happened?
Yeah.
And it's so unknowable going into it. It feels, there's kind of a classic, here's a presidential election classic case study for you. And you can read it yourself if you go back and read the Bob Woodward book, The Agenda, which is an amazing book about how policy decisions are actually made by incoming administrations. 1992, Bill Clinton is elected, right? Change was his whole theme. Change versus more of the same. We're going to shake things up, blah, 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 blah. And he comes into office and there's this big moment. They sit down, the whole economic team, and they try to decide, we're coming out of a recession then too. And there are two theories of the economy. There's the Labor Secretary, Robert Reich, who says, the way you ensure durable economic growth is you build infrastructure. That's sort of the durable economic base, the engine of the economy. Build schools, build rail, that kind of thing. Robert Rubin, Secretary of the Treasury, says, no. We need to settle bond markets. Al Gore later said, if I'm reincarnated, I want to come back as a bond market. So the point is, Bill Clinton went with Robert Rubin, and it was all about, let's cut the deficit. He actually balanced the budget. We actually generated a surplus. The rest is history. we didn't know that going in. If you were like a bond investor, you didn't know that any of that was going to happen. He could have gone the other way.
Right. And built more schools. Hey, if you get reincarnated, are you coming back as a bond market? What are you going to come back as?
if I'm reincarnated, I'm going to come back as a functional chair. I'm just going to tease that. I'm going to tease that thought for later. Let me give you one more. More because this is where I think, for me anyway, a lot of the foundation myth comes from. 2000 election. You've got George W. Bush versus Al Gore, and George W. pretty much said, like, I want to attack Iraq, right? Like, he was all about it. He's like, they're bad people. They tried to kill my dad. He literally said that. And so there was, this was like the worst kept secret in Washington, that if you believe George W. Bush is going to win, put your money into defense contractors, like buy those stocks. You're going to do really, really well. So let me give you a story that seems to hang together.
Yeah. And just to frame that, you had told me this right before we started recording.
Right.
And so I didn't have the stats and stuff, so I was curious as well. So you looked them up. So tell us what. Yeah,
let me give you the stats, and then I want your brain dump on this. So the stat is, if you had bought the top 5 defense contractors, $10,000 worth on September 18th, 2001, and you had held it for 20 years, you would have made $100,000. It would be worth $100,000.
10x,
right? Yeah. And if you had just invested in a stock market index, you would have made $60,000. Therefore, a 58% better return buying those defense contractors.
Oh, look at you. Look at that math. 58%.
Yeah. Well,
you got to be prepared.
What you get with the sport for education, people. So Mike, case closed, right? You can predict what's going to happen.
Closed. Yeah,
case
absolutely.
Closed.
And that was over what time period again?
20 years.
23 years. So
the article I was referencing was written in 2001. So it was 20. It was
20 years. 20 years.
Even 20, yeah.
So, what that shows to me, my immediate reaction was, well, yeah, certain sectors, it's a bet on a sector, defense, right? Over 20 years. So it has nothing to do with a single election. It just has to do with, a sector over a longer period of time. And some sectors win out. Defense can win out. The typical ones here in the US, just for people, are technology and healthcare. Those two sectors tend to win out here in the US. So you're just saying, defense for the last 20 years has been a sector that you want to be into. Now, we obviously have been to wars and there's been more peacetime. Like there's been, over the last 20 years, there's been some of both, right? So it's not, you couldn't say, oh, geez, this is a no-brainer. You have to take some, leap of faith for risk in that investment. Now, the next 20 years, hey, it's another crapshoot. It's like, hey, is defense going to be great? Healthcare, technology, energy sector, which of these is going to be great over the next 20 years? No idea.
Can I give you a dose of wisdom back to you? You said a few minutes ago that world events matter a lot more than who's president. And the baseline for the stat I just gave you is September 18th, 2001. Well, that was 1 week after September 11th. If Al Gore had been president, we don't know what would have happened, but we almost certainly would have attacked the Taliban in Afghanistan, and defense contractors would have done, from a stock market perspective purely, would have done really well. And as you pointed out, it's over 20 years. Yeah. So, Barack Obama was president for a lot of that time.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. So was it the George W. election of 2000? I think this is a great example of one of these things where we can retroactively weave a story that on the surface seems like, yep, that prediction was right. You should have, if you were going to bet George W. Bush, you should have bet on defense. It's like, but is it though? Not really.
Yeah, not when you look at the long-term results. So just bear that in mind as we head into the fall here. I think, understand that volatility is going to happen over these coming weeks. Markets hate the unknowns. You're going to see a lot of these ups and downs. Don't panic. Don't pull the trigger. Think back to our episode a week or so ago when we talked about do nothing. So stick and bear with it and just understand that it'll smooth out. When you look back at all these other examples of elections and you look at the charts of the stock market return, they all look smooth as you zoom out, by 1, 3, 5, 10, 20 years. So stick with your plan, have a plan and stick with it.
Don't try and never try to time the market, right?
Never try to time the market.
All right. Well, should we do our amazingly tied in one thing?
One thing, let's go.
You go first.
Yeah, you're the one falling around in your chair over there. I come into the episode, Matt's fumbling around.
All right,
I have no idea what's going on over there.
I'll leave it to you. Do you want the cautionary tale, or do you want the good version of this?
Give me the cautionary tale. First of all, let's say what it is. When you're going to invest in something, and we're not talking investments necessarily stock market, but when you're going to buy something quality. My opinion is buy something quality one time, spend a little more upfront, buy something quality. I think you get two things out of this. One, you get better enjoyment throughout the life of that item. You've spent a little more and you spent a little more. So every time you pick up or use that item, it's going to bring you a little more pleasure. And that's great. You think, I got this quality thing. I'm really glad I got this or whatever. And then secondly, it's going to break less often. Okay. And with the number of things in our household, the number of items that are breaking all the time, you want to try to minimize that. So buy something that hopefully will last a lot longer.
And now a word from today's sponsor, Mercedes-Benz. So are you saying just spend through the nose on everything in your life, man?
No, I'm saying
not really.
No, what I'm saying is buy less things and more quality items.
Well, I wish that's information that would have been useful to me about 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
When I was sitting I can't capture it on video. I don't want to swivel my whole thing. And the reason I want to swivel my whole video setup here is viewers may have noticed that I'm coming to you from a low place. That's because my chair has descended. It's sunk. And I used to sit in, if I were able to swivel, I would show you it's in the corner. I used to sit in a crappy chair and I was developing a backache during the day. So I said, I'm going to buy one of those nice chairs, with the black webbing on the back. And I looked at an Aeron chair. Today's sponsor, Aeron Chairs.
Yeah.
And it was like $700. And I was like, I'm not doing this. Come on. So instead, I went to our good friends at Amazon, who are not sponsoring today's show. And I bought a knockoff brand, like $125. And I still think, this is ritzy for a chair, which it kind of is. Guess what is not working very well? My freaking chair. And the reason I thought this was such a great tie-in today is I don't know. I tried to sort of George W. Bush this, clearly I should buy that. I should have just invested for the long haul. Said, what is something I want to own for the next 20 years? If I had done that, I'd be so much better off.
Well, it's hilarious that this is the example because 20 plus years ago, I did buy an Aeron chair and I am still sitting in it today. And
today's segment is brought to you by rubbing it in. Rubbing it in. When you really want your friend to feel terrible about his bad life choices, try rubbing it in.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you a little bit more. So this chair is fantastic. And it is. And here's the other thing, Matt. Do you know how many hours? Do you know how many hours you sit in a chair each day? Why would you not invest in the thing you're using 8 hours a day? What kind of dope are you over there?
I want to subsidize chiropractors. I don't know. I don't know. I made a bad decision.
Don't throw good money after bad money.
This is a lesson.
Buy a serious chair. You sit all day in it.
Now my problem is at the time, the future was further away than it is now. And so at the time I was like, I could have done it, but now I'm feeling the pressing weight of college is not that far away from my kids. So I feel like it's my back versus my children's entire future.
A few $100 is going to change the trajectory of the college in 8 to 10 years from now.
Now I'm speaking directly to the Aeron Chair Company. if you would like to sponsor this show, I will do a read on air in every single episode, but I'd like 50% off my next share. That's all I'm asking.
That's it, 50%. You're not even a free share, just 50%
No, I don't
off.
even. I'm not.
I'm going to aim that high. You know what? Just aim for the mediocre. There you go, Matt.
Aim for the mediocre. The new slogan of our show is financial life planning, aiming for the mediocre. But that is not actually the lesson of today. The lesson of today is aim high, and invest for the long term. And
there you go.
Don't worry. You know what? Whoever you're supporting in this election, don't worry. It'll probably be fine.
It'll be fun.
It'll be fun. All right.
For the stock market.
For Mike Morton, I'm Matt Robison. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for joining us on Financial Life Planning. If you like what you heard, please subscribe to and rate the podcast on Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. It makes a massive difference. If you have a comment or question, please email me, mike@mortonfa.com. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. This recording is for informational purposes only and should not be considered for investment advice. Opinions expressed are as of the date of recording. Such opinions are subject to change. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of the data presented here.